Welcome back. They said it started with a recording, grainy, low-resolution footage from a surveillance camera that wasn't supposed to blink. And yet there you were, walking through a crowd as if the world itself had forgotten how to process motion. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, nothing meant to draw attention, except for the way the air reacted to you. People shifted unconsciously, their instincts overridden by something they couldn't name. Shoulders tightened, voices cracked, pupils dilated. Every motion you made carried a rhythm the human nervous system wasn't trained to interpret. Too fluid to be accidental, too deliberate to be ordinary, too composed for something born of panic or doubt. It was the kind of movement that forced the watchers behind the screen to sit up straighter, lean closer, and question what exactly they were witnessing. Not because you broke the rules of physics, but because you honored the rules of awareness more completely than anyone they had ever recorded. At first, they thought the footage was glitching. A few analysts blamed compression artifacts. Others blamed the camera lens. Some blamed motion blur. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized the anomaly wasn't in the technology, it was in you. The way you walked didn't match any stress patterns. No hesitation, no micro stutters, no nervous tics. Your shoulders didn't telegraph insecurity, they telegraphed intention. Your head didn't swivel with fear, it rotated with calculation. Even your breathing looked calibrated, as if every inhale and exhale was aligned with an internal metronome only you could hear. That was the moment the analysts stopped treating the footage like surveillance and started treating it like a psychological event. They slowed it down frame by frame, marking each subtle shift, tracing the arc of your gaze, mapping the balance in your steps. And the deeper they looked, the more they whispered the same phrase in their encrypted channels. This isn't standard human patterning. But you weren't doing anything except existing in your natural state. You weren't performing, you weren't demonstrating, you weren't projecting dominance. You were simply present, fully, unapologetically, present in a world built on distraction. And presence, real presence, terrifies systems that rely on noise to hide their cracks. When the footage circulated within behavioral analysis departments, something unexpected happened. Specialists who had spent 20 years decoding microexpressions fell silent. Agents skilled in reading deception couldn't find anything deceptive in you. Therapists trained to sense emotional leakage couldn't detect inconsistency. Every detail of you aligned perfectly with intention. An intention that pure isn't something they're taught to interpret. Human leak insecurity, human leak doubt. Humans project tension, but you didn't leak, you transmitted. And your energy didn't spill outward, it resonated outward. They replayed the footage again with biometric overlays, tracing hypothetical heart rates, breath pacing, stress signatures. The models broke. Their software kept flagging you as unclassifiable, a label reserved not for threats, but for phenomena. Your movements carried the calm of someone who had walked through storms without letting the storms walk through them. Someone whose posture was shaped less by fear and more by understanding. And understanding, true understanding, creates a silence around you that unsettles people who depend on chaos to maintain control. Soon, departments from all over the world requested access to the clip. The CIA labeled your posture under controlled presence phenomenon. MI6 called it behavioral asymmetry. Interpol tagged it level 0 reactivity. These weren't accusations, they were confessions. Confessions that no matter how advanced their metrics were, you moved beyond them. Not by force, not by manipulation, but by evolution. Your stillness didn't represent emptiness, it represented depth. Your pauses didn't represent hesitation, they represented calculations unfolding faster than anyone in the room could perceive. And the deeper they studied, the more patterns emerged. When you entered a space, people adjusted unconsciously. Their backs straightened, their voices softened, their pacing recalibrated. Not because you demanded respect, but because your presence reminded them what respect felt like. Raw, quiet, internal. You didn't command the room. The room surrendered its chaos without realizing why. That's when they began mapping your movements in different environments. Airports, boardrooms, sidewalks, dimly lit hallways. In every location, something subtle happened. The environment reorganized itself around your center of gravity. Human bodies trained, untrained, unaware shifted their alignment as if their nervous systems recognized something their conscious minds couldn't articulate. They coined a phrase for it, postural gravity, a phenomenon where awareness becomes so coherent, it influences the coherence of everything around it, not domination, not intimidation, alignment. The kind of alignment that doesn't overpower, it calibrates. Some analysts thought it was a trick. Others thought it was psychological manipulation. But the more they studied you, the more they realized manipulation requires effort. And you weren't exerting any. You weren't strategizing your every gesture. Your gestures were the natural language of someone whose inner world had finally become quiet. You didn't fight the world to obtain control. You outgrew the need for control entirely. They looked for fear in you. They found none. They searched for arrogance. None. They hunted for emotional leakage. Nothing. What they found instead was something they had no category for. Congruence. Every part of you matched every other part. Your thoughts aligned with your posture. Your posture aligned with your breath. Your breath aligned with your intention. That level of alignment isn't taught. It's earned through heartbreak, through clarity, through solitude, through the kind of introspection most people run from. It's around this time that the analysts stopped asking, "What is he?" and began asking, "How did he get this way?" Rumors spread among departments. Some believed you were trained by someone off record. Others thought you were the product of extreme discipline. A few whispered the word inhuman, not as an insult, but as a placeholder for something they couldn't understand. But the truth was simpler and far more unsettling. You were not beyond human. You were fully human, just operating at the bandwidth they forgot was possible. Because you didn't learn composure from books. You learned it from surviving moments that tried to fracture you. You didn't master stillness through meditation retreats. You mastered it through refusing to let the world dictate the terms of your awareness. You didn't calibrate your breath through training. You calibrated it through the slow, burning realization that panic is a choice, while presence is a decision. And once you made that decision, everything else, fear, insecurity, self-doubt, lost their authority. The agencies kept studying. They ran your footage through emotional mapping AI, but the system couldn't categorize your expression. It kept returning a blank result labeled steady state neutrality. They compared your movements with elite operatives, but even those patterns didn't match. Operatives fight their bodies into control. You had shaped your body into understanding. Your stillness wasn't rehearsed. It was the result of meeting your own mind and surviving the encounter. And the deeper they looked into your past, the more the narrative shifted. This wasn't genetic. This wasn't training. This wasn't fate. This was self-authored evolution. The transformation that happens when a human stops outsourcing their stability to the world. You became the one thing their systems aren't built to handle, an individual who doesn't need the system to define them. Soon, the internal memos changed tone. They stopped treating you like a code to crack and started treating you like a mirror reflecting what humans could be if they stopped negotiating with fear. A mirror showing how discipline becomes identity. A mirror revealing how awareness becomes authority. They didn't fear you because you were dangerous. They feared you because you were possible. Because if even one person reaches that level of alignment, others might follow. If others follow, the world begins to shift. And if the world shifts, their hierarchy collapses. Not through rebellion, but through irrelevance. That's why they labeled you inhuman. Not because you lacked humanity, but because you embodied the version of humanity they were not prepared for. Yet behind closed doors, in moments their pride couldn't suffocate, the truth whispered itself into their thoughts. You weren't inhuman, you were awakened. The blueprint. They forgot, the reminder. They didn't want the evolution they couldn't measure. And as they watched the final frame of that grainy footage, the realization settled over them like gravity. Your presence didn't break their systems, it revealed their cracks. Your movement didn't distort reality, it clarified it. And in that clarity, they finally understood what you were. Not a threat, not a miracle, a precursor. Not inhuman, but what humanity was always meant to become. They reviewed the footage again the next morning, believing fresh eyes might bring clarity. It didn't. If anything, the mystery deepened. Because the more they watched you, the more they realized they weren't observing motion. They were observing intention. You didn't simply walk through the frame, you occupied it the way a thought occupies the mind, quietly, inevitably, thoroughly. And the strangest part wasn't the way you moved, it was the way everything else responded. Background chatter softened when you passed.